Hey, I'm Isaac,
And I'm Noah,
and we're from the equipment room on the fourth floor of the library.
and today we're going to be talking about the basics of using a DSLR camera. DSLRs are great cameras for really a lot of things. They're great for pictures and they're also great for video. This camera right here is the Canon SL2, which is the camera that we have most of in the equipment room here in the library.
For those of you who aren't familiar that well with DSLR cameras, we want to show you some of the basic components that it has. So the zoom is kind of more obvious. It's the lower and larger ring.
The focus on the camera is the outer ring here, and you can see this switch right here, which allows you to control whether it's manual focus or autofocus. When the camera is on autofocus, you press this trigger right here halfway for the camera to focus.
Using a DSLR camera is all about taking control over your image or video. We use the settings dial located right here in order to take that control. The settings options that we want to talk about today are P, TV, AV, and M. P, or this automatic setting, could be easiest or best. It's where the camera has all control over the situation. But for some photographers, they might want to take more control than that.
TV mode is the mode on the camera where you can control the shutter speed. Now that's the speed of how long the shutter in the camera remains open, and also how much light has the opportunity of coming into the sensor. Having a fast shutter speed is important when taking pictures of things that are moving fast. If you have too slow of a shutter speed, you'll be able to see that the image is very blurry because of all that motion. On the other hand, having a slow shutter speed can be useful for letting a lot of light into the camera in low light situations, and it can also create some nice effects. To move the shutter speed up or down, you use this dial right next to the shooting button on the top of the camera. You'll notice that the fraction on the display changes, and the smaller the fraction, the faster the shutter speed time.
This mode is called the aperture priority mode. Aperture is how big the hole is through the lens that allows the light through the camera. So some advantages of having, say, a large aperture, which means a small number on the setting, is being able to have something called a small depth of field, which pretty much means that you can only see one thing in focus. One of the advantages of having a small aperture, which is a larger number in the settings, is being able to have a large depth of field. This could be great for landscape shots or some other kind of shots that might need a lot of things to be in focus.
The last setting we're going to talk about today is manual mode, which is actually basically just a combination of the shutter speed mode, TV, and the aperture mode, AV. In this mode, you can control both the shutter speed and the aperture of the camera. To adjust the shutter speed, you do it the same way by moving this dial on the top here, but in order to move the aperture, you have to hold down this AV button while you rotate the dial. One thing you want to watch out for when you're in this mode is the exposure dial that you can see on the screen and also through the viewfinder when you're looking through the viewfinder. This dial, when it's at 0, means that the shot is neither too bright nor too dark. When the dial starts moving into the positive side, it means your shot might be getting a little too overexposed or a little too bright. If it's in the negative side, you have to worry about some things being too dark or too underexposed. Another important part of the exposure of the camera is known as the ISO. And the ISO you can change by hitting the ISO button on the top here and by moving the controls over here. The lower your ISO, the sharper the image quality will be. The higher the ISO, things start to get a little grainy, a little noisy, and sometimes a little fuzzy. as much as possible, photographers try to keep their camera set to a low ISO. But the ISO does help in situations that are dark or low light, because when you increase the ISO, the overall exposure of the camera increases. And with any other questions that you might have, feel free to stop by the equipment room in the 4th floor of the library, and we'll be able to help you out.